Hello, Work in Progress Wednesday, and we're going to talk about a couple of things that I talked about last week. First of all, this. Now, when I showed you this last week, it was pretty much fresh off the loom. It hadn't been wet finished, so it hadn't reached what is the final form of weaving. Now that it is wet finished, it is much, I'm showing you so badly, it is much softer, it is much drapier. Because sometimes when weaving comes off the loom, it's a little bit stiff and it needs to be soaked or washed. Wet finished, basically, which I think I said. Wet finishing, for those who don't weave, is literally just giving the piece a wash once it's off the loom. And that lets the yarn do everything that the yarn wants to do. In this case, it bloomed, so it's filled in all the little squares between the warp and the weft, and it has become much softer and much drapier and a proper, comfortable scarf to wear. It was a little bit stiff before. Often is stuff often is coming off the loom. It's either very stiff or it's loose or it's just, you know, not quite right yet. So that's why you wet finish, because it lets the yarn do the yarn thing, and then you end up with, look at the drape. That is not how you demonstrate drape. I'm just waving this for the fun of it. Now, last week I was also talking about a project that I had in mind, and I have done it, and it went. Oh, it certainly went. So I'm going to get it out of my bag. It's not wet finished. Of course it's not, because of who I am as a person. But I'll show you it. So I'll just get rid of this. So it's still got its ends on. So the plan was, and the plan succeeded, to be honest, to take this rainbow spectrum yarn. I'll show you from the purple there, through the red, through the blue again, and then a kind of disappointing yellow, which is a bit greeny, but that's okay. Through the orange and then back to red and orange there, because it repeats backwards. So it doesn't go red, purple, blue. It goes red, orange, yellow, and then back through to the blue. Now, on the other side of it, I have this very open weave mesh, because this half, this lower half, I can't point, but I'll shake it at you. This lower half here is done with the cotton slub. And then obviously this upper half is done with the, what's it called? Glitter Deluxe from Hobie Yarns. What I hadn't thought about, and I should have thought about it, I should have known better, but I didn't, because I didn't think about it for more than 8 seconds, was that what I would have with this is incredible tension problems. So, if you don't weave, when you weave, the warp is, if you don't weave, I'm going to explain. For people who don't weave, there we go, I got there. Well done me. When you weave, your warp, which is the thread that runs lengthways, is under tension on the loom, so that you can put your weft, which goes this way, through it. Now, what I hadn't thought about was that there's 2 reasons why the tension on this went absolutely ridiculous. I will show you the tension. So here's some footage I took last night before I cut it off the loom. So on this side I've got a nice, beautiful, tight tension, which is absolutely perfect. And then on this side, it's just hanging loose, effectively. So the thin side is the loose side, and there's 2 reasons for that, and I would have thought of them had I thought about it. So the first problem is the warp has a lot of take-up on this side, because this yarn is quite thick. So it has to travel further to go over and under that yarn, just as, because the warp goes over and under just as the weft does, just in a different way slightly, whereas the take up on this side is virtually 0, because this yarn is so thin. So this yarn was getting effectively shorter and this yarn wasn't. So that led to problem number 1. Problem number 2, I didn't even realise until a friend pointed it out, because I was complaining about my warp woes. That's the kind of conversation you get to have with me if you're my friend. I talk to you about how my weaving's going quite badly. It didn't go badly, it was just tricky. So when you've finished weaving a piece and you advance the warp, you roll it onto the front beam. And if you're smarter than I was, you will have figured out the problem already. So as this goes on, you then put everything back under tension, and that's fine if it's packed on this side, and this side was nice and packed because it was all thick and sitting nicely on top of each other, whereas this side, like that. So one thing I did try was to unroll the front beam, which I don't like doing because it can make everything a little bit upsetting. But I did it anyway, and then packed some thin card between each layer, and that did help a little bit. And my other thing was to do my usual trick, which to get a roll of cotton, spool, that's the word. I was going to say I need more coffee, but I've had coffee today, it's all right. I get a spool of cotton and push it under the loose threads, and that usually works for me quite well. So a combination of those 2 got me limping to this point. Now, I didn't use quite the whole ball because actually this end is the finishing end. I was planning to use the whole ball, and it probably would have been maybe that much longer if I had. But I got to this point, and then the tension started going on this side, and I literally just thought, you know what? No, I'm not. So this is as long as it is, and it's not like short. So this will be one that I'm keeping, I think. So I will put it on. I don't tend to put on the ones that I'm going to, try and sell or pass on, because I just feel weird about it. So yes, so it needs to be wet finished. It came out exactly as I hoped it would. So it looks like I wanted it to. We'll see how it looks when it's wet finished, but this loose mesh against this nice thick soft yarn here, I mean, it's exactly how I pictured in my head. It was just a little bit trickier getting there than I had planned. So no weaving at the moment because I am back on the bags. I nearly said back on my bullshit. Same thing. So I'm back on the bags because the festival's next month and I've got a lot of fabric and I'm going to get stuck into that, and I will not use up all my fabric before the festival, but for the time being I'm back on the Moore's bags to get them made and ready to distribute. Cross stitch. I have done a little bit on the cross stitch, so let me take this off. If I remember, I'll show you this next week after it's been wet finished. If I remember to wet finish it. I can make no promises. So the cross stitch I've done a little bit on. Last week Susie, hello Susie, pointed out that if I didn't point at where I'd done anything, she wouldn't have noticed. So I'm a little hurt, Susie. No, I'm not really. So here's how it looked last week anyway. And this is how it's looking now. So I am going to point to where I've done some stuff. So I filled in this gap down here, do you see? And I've done a little bit more up here, but not a huge amount, because Stardew Valley. Video games, once again, the downfall of my creative time. But it's taking the time that it takes, but it will get there. But that is how it is looking so far. I'm going to, I think, do all of the dark background around the top and then fill in the petals, and then I can sort of do this colouring in bit without looking at the chart, which will be nice and relaxing. But that is what I have for you this week. I'm going to go and cut out some bags and get them ready for sewing, and back on the bags. I hope you are having a lovely week, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your week and a lovely start of next week as well. I just hope you have a lovely time. Thank you very much for watching. I'm trying to think if there was something else I meant to talk about. If there was, it's too late now. You take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.